Hello, everyone. Christina here. Today's edited replay, I'm actually doing the voiceover for. I had some audio issues and I was just kind of all over the board in the actual live stream. So if you want to see more detail about what I do in this video, go ahead and click on the link down the video description and you can watch the full length version of the live stream. But just to give a summary of what we're doing here at the beginning, I'm using this photo that's on my phone on the side as inspiration for a nighttime sky blended background. I'm using 5 different colors of Distress Oxide ink. I've got dried marigold, picked raspberry, seedless preserves, villainous potion, and I'm going to bring in some black soot here. And I'm just going to make a really nice blended background. And I'm going to use some mini round blending foams. These are the domed foams. So it's easy to get a really good background. And the secret to this is just lots and lots and lots of ink. After all of the ink blending, I moved on to stamping the images for my card. These images come from the Happiest Wishes stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. This is one that I used in my previous video, and people in the chat for the live stream requested this stamp set, and it was right on my desk, so I thought, why not? So I'm stamping the images onto watercolor paper with some waterproof black ink. This is VersaFine black ink. It's Onyx black to be specific. And I stamped it twice so that I could get a really solid line on this watercolor paper. By the way, this is some Strathmore pre-cut 5x7 watercolor paper. While I had the stamps out, I grabbed the 2 cloud images, and even though I stamped them on watercolor paper, I actually just changed my mind and decided to have them on vellum. So I'm positioning the 2 clouds in the corner of this piece of vellum, and I'm going to stamp the images and heat emboss them. So I'm going to prep the paper with an anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to be stamping the clouds in Versamark ink. And because I need multiple clouds for this card design that I've got in my head, I decided to have these in the top corner of the vellum piece, and then I can stamp them again without removing them from my MISTI by just rotating that piece of vellum. And then I can have the second set of clouds in the opposite corner. So after I stamped the clouds in Versamark ink, I then coated them in some white embossing powder. This is alabaster embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. So I sprinkled that on, and then I'm going to use a heat tool to heat set it until it's smooth and melted. Now, just a warning, if you've never heat embossed on vellum, just note that it heats up very, very quickly and melts the powder faster than it does on paper. So just be aware of that and make sure that you don't scorch your vellum or heat it a little bit too long. So then I went back to watercoloring those images that I stamped before. I'm going to be using Distress inks, and I'm just picking them up from a palette that's on the side. I finished up all of that watercolor painting and set the images aside for a minute while I prepped my background for some stamping. I'm going to be stamping the greeting for my card directly onto the background, and I'm going to heat emboss it. And because this oxide ink can stay sticky for a long time, I just want to make sure that it's completely dry before I move on to my stamping and heat embossing. So I'm using my heat tool and drying this background really, really well. And then I'm going to grab my embossing powder and I'm going to give it a quick test. I've not stamped on it at this point. I just want to make sure that when I'm ready to stamp that it's going to work. So I'm sprinkling on that powder, tapping it off really, really well. And you can see that there's still some powder that's sticking. So I'm glad I checked. I'm glad I tested it. I can brush off that powder with a clean, dry brush, and then I can heat it again and make sure that it's dry. So second time was a charm. I just had to heat it a little bit more. And then when I tested it a second time, that embossing powder slid right off after I tapped it. So then I moved on to cutting out all of the images. So I cut them all the way up to the edge. And then to make it look like I cut them out perfectly, I used a black brush tip marker and just painted the edges of the paper. And that makes it look like I have a perfect cut around the images. I also cut out the clouds out of the vellum. I left a little bit of a border around the clouds so that it looks a little bit nicer. And then it was time to start assembling my scene. So here's the card that I made earlier this week with the same stamp set. And I just wanted to use that as sort of a way to jog my memory on some different formations of where I could have the clouds be. I ended up with roughly this arrangement, and I wanted to make sure that I remembered how everything was placed after I started stamping. So I took a quick picture with my phone. And then I removed all the elements except for that greeting. And I moved the background and the greeting directly into my MISTI so that I could stamp the greeting. So I prepped the area of my background with an anti-static powder tool and then stamped the greeting in Versamark ink. I used that same alabaster embossing powder from Brutus Monroe that I used on the clouds, and then I heat set it with my heat gun. And it heats that really, really well, nice and bright and vibrant. For the clouds, because they're vellum, I wanted to have adhesive on every bit of the surface of the cloud so that you can't actually distinguish any adhesive on the card where the vellum is. So I ran the 3 clouds I'm using on my card through this Create Sticker machine from Xyron, and just put that through the machine, press down on it to make sure the adhesive is adhering to the back of the clouds, and then you're good to go. You can remove that front plastic piece, and you're left with essentially stickers that can go directly onto your project. So using my photo on my phone as a reference, I then started assembling my card. I peeled off each one of these clouds and very carefully determined where they would go. They're not in the exact position that I had them on the original arrangement, but it still worked out great. In fact, one of the clouds I actually moved up to the top because I decided I liked it better up there. It left that bottom area completely open. So I trimmed off the excess that the clouds that were hanging off the end, and then I grabbed a Tombow mono drawing pen and I drew in that string that I'd had to cut off when I cut the images out. And I also added the little loops or the little swirls with the string, and I added another string up at the top on the tip of the balloon. So the card's almost done. I just wanted to add some more nighttime elements. So I used a white gel pen. This is a Jelly Roll number 10 bold pen, and I added dots that sort of look like stars. But I also did little sparkle shapes to look like twinkling stars, and I think that just gives it a really, really fun look, takes it up a notch. And I just wanted to have more of the stars near the top, just a few kind of scattered near the bottom of the card design. To finish it off, I used my corner chomper to round the bottom corners on the card, and that will finish the card for today. So this was actually a 90-minute live stream. It took a long time to get this card from start to finish, but I love how it turned out. I love that color combo. It's absolutely beautiful. Just a reminder that everything I've used today is listed down below in the video description. The stamp set that I used, which is called Happiest Wishes, it is included in the June 2022 card kit from Simon, but you can purchase it outside of the kit as well. So make sure you check that out. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in another video very soon.